Imagine this. A powerful army, ready to conquer, marches forward. Their weapons are strong, their strategy flawless. But suddenly, nature itself turns against them. Freezing cold, burning heat, brutal storms. Some of the greatest military campaigns in history were not defeated by the enemy, but by the weather. History has shown us again and again that war is unpredictable. But sometimes it's not the generals or the soldiers who decide the outcome, it's the forces of nature. In this video, we're going to look at 5 times when the weather completely changed the course of war. From Napoleon's doomed march into Russia to the unexpected sandstorms of Desert Storm, these moments show how even the greatest military minds can be powerless against nature. Stay with us until the end, and you'll see how weather has shaped history in ways you never imagined. Now, let's dive in. 1. Napoleon's Russian disaster, 1812. Napoleon Bonaparte was one of the greatest military leaders of all time. He had conquered much of Europe and was feared by his enemies. But in 1812, he made a fatal mistake. He underestimated the power of winter. Napoleon's grand army of over 600,000 men marched into Russia, expecting a quick victory. But the Russians had a different plan. They avoided major battles and instead kept retreating, burning their own cities and farms as they went. This was known as a scorched earth strategy. By the time Napoleon's army reached Moscow, they found the city abandoned and in flames. There was no food, no supplies, and no shelter. And then the Russian winter arrived. Temperatures dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius, minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. Soldiers froze to death in their sleep. Their horses died, leaving them without transport. Guns and cannons jammed in the ice. Starving and exhausted, Napoleon had no choice but to retreat. By the time they made it back to France, only about 30,000 of his men had survived. The cold had done what no army could, destroy Napoleon's dream of ruling Europe. 2. The mud of Waterloo, 1815. Just 3 years after his Russian disaster, Napoleon faced his final battle at Waterloo. And once again, nature played a crucial role in his defeat. The night before the battle, heavy rain poured down on the battlefield. The ground became a thick sea of mud. Napoleon's army relied on fast-moving cavalry and powerful artillery, but the wet, muddy ground made it impossible to move quickly. His cannons couldn't be positioned properly because they kept sinking into the mud. His cavalry charges were slower, giving the British and Prussian forces more time to react. This delay gave his enemies a huge advantage. By the end of the day, Napoleon had lost the battle, and his empire. Some historians believe that without the rain, he might have won. But once again, weather had played its part in shaping history. 3. The miracle of Dunkirk, 1940. Fast forward to World War II. The German army had trapped hundreds of thousands of British and French soldiers on the beaches of Dunkirk, France. The situation looked hopeless. They were surrounded, and German planes were ready to wipe them out. But then, something incredible happened. The weather changed in a way that saved the Allies. First, heavy clouds and fog appeared, making it difficult for the German Air Force to bomb the stranded soldiers. Then, the usually rough waters of the English Channel suddenly calmed down, making it easier for boats to cross. This allowed a massive rescue operation to take place. Thousands of small boats, fishing vessels, and Navy ships worked together to evacuate over 330,000 soldiers back to Britain. Winston Churchill called it a miracle. If the weather had been different, if the skies had been clear or the sea had been rough, many of those soldiers might never have made it home. And who knows how that would change the outcome of World War II. 4. The frozen hell of Stalingrad, 1942 to 1943. The Battle of Stalingrad was one of the deadliest battles in history. The German army, led by Adolf Hitler, tried to take the Soviet city of Stalingrad in 1942. At first, they made progress, pushing deep into the city. But then, winter arrived. Temperatures dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius, minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The German soldiers, who were not prepared for such extreme cold, began to suffer. Their tanks and guns froze. Their food supplies ran low. Meanwhile, the Soviet army, used to the harsh Russian winter, launched a massive counterattack. Surrounded and cut off from supplies, the Germans were forced to surrender in early 1943. It was a turning point in the war. After Stalingrad, Hitler's army was on the defensive, and the Soviets began pushing them back all the way to Berlin. Once again, weather had played a decisive role. 5. The Sandstorm of Desert Storm, 1991. Our final story takes us to the Gulf War in 1991, where a powerful sandstorm helped the U.S.-led coalition forces defeat Saddam Hussein's army. During Operation Desert Storm, American and Allied forces launched a major ground assault to liberate Kuwait from Iraqi occupation. The Iraqi army, expecting a direct attack, had fortified their positions, but what they didn't expect was the weather. A massive sandstorm swept across the battlefield, covering everything in a thick cloud of dust. While this might seem like a disadvantage for both sides, it actually helped the coalition forces. The advanced technology of the U.S. military, including night vision and thermal imaging, allowed them to continue their attack even in zero visibility. Meanwhile, the Iraqi army, which relied more on traditional tactics, was completely blinded. By the time the storm cleared, coalition forces had already advanced deep into enemy territory, forcing Saddam's troops to retreat. The war ended quickly, and Kuwait was liberated. From the freezing cold of Russia to the scorching heat of the Gulf War, weather has shaped some of the most important battles in history. Napoleon, Hitler, and Saddam Hussein all learned the hard way that even the best military strategy can be useless against the power of nature. So, the next time you hear about a war, remember, it's not just about weapons and tactics. Sometimes, the weather can be the most powerful force on the battlefield. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more amazing history stories, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.